113th episode of AEW Dynamite took place from, where was this? Duluth, Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. And it kicked things off. The first thing we hear is Hangman Page's music. Hangman Page is coming out to do commentary for Bryan Danielson versus Allin Angels. Now, in the 24 hours leading up to this match, Allin Angels had put out a bunch of stuff on social media about how he grew up in the area. This building is somehow connected to his high school, I guess. And Danielson just said he didn't care and he was going to kick Allin Angels' head in anyway, and that's exactly what happened. But in sort of typical fashion for how some of these matches go in AEW, this was not like a straight up Danielson squash match. Like it never is. Like, we see Danielson and CM Punk, we'd see them both taking on quote unquote lower level competition this week, but each time their opponent got in a lot of offense, and in the case of CM Punk versus Lee Moriarty, got in some near falls where it almost looked like, hey, we could see a huge upset here. I mean, I don't think anybody actually really believed we'd see an upset, but there was one near fall where it was like, oh, whoa, hey, what almost happened there, huh? So this match, Allin Angels did get in a bunch of offense. They chopped each other. They did some grappling, but eventually Danielson just kind of took it to Allin Angels. And after Angels missed a moonsault, Daniels hit him with a running knee. And then, of course, he's used that move as his finisher a lot. And so the idea is, well, he could have just pinned him then and there, but he decided to continue the attack. And he did that move where he grabs his opponent's arms and he just starts kicking his opponent's head in. But he did it in such a bad guy way this week. You know, he just slowly grabbed the guy by the arms where you could tell, oh, this match is over. Allin Angels is completely out. He could just pin him right now. What's he doing, this dastardly bad guy? But he just keeps kicking his head in. And then eventually he locked in a knee bar and Allin Angels tapped. Bryan Danielson is the winner. And then same as we got last week when he defeated Cole Cabana in Chicago, Tony Schiavone gets in the ring and interviews Bryan Danielson, who just milks his new heel turn for everything that it's worth. But if you notice, Bryan Danielson, when his music hits, when he first comes out, he gets cheered because everybody's happy to see him. It's just, once the match gets going, he starts getting into his persona. That's when everybody remembers, oh yeah, we're supposed to boo him. We like him, but we're supposed to boo him, so we'll boo him. And that's kind of a unique thing that has happened in AEW that doesn't happen a lot elsewhere. It certainly does happen, but it seems to happen in AEW more than other promotions where it's you like the bad guy. You're aware he's awesome, but you're supposed to boo him, so you boo him. And I feel like MJF is a little bit like that. I think everybody who boos MJF, it's not like MJF has go away heat. Everybody's happy to see him. Everybody's happy he's going to be out there cutting a Roddy Piper-esque promo, but you boo him because you're supposed to boo him. And I felt like in the early days of AEW, that's what a lot of fans were doing with Chris Jericho as well. Chris Jericho was the number one heel in the company for the first year, but everybody kind of respects Jericho, respected what he was doing. And so they booed him, but secretly kind of cheering it, like not cheering him, but secretly in the back of your head, you respect this guy. You're glad he's out there. You're entertained by him. You like him, but you're booing him. That's kind of what happens with Bryan Danielson. There's not one person who boos Bryan Danielson that doesn't like Bryan Danielson. And I think that's just sort of an interesting dynamic. Because he's so good at being a bad guy too. It's strange that, I guess it's not strange. It is a little odd at least. Not that there's much difference between strange and odd, but that he would be a heel so quickly. After making that big debut at All Out in one of the most memorable segments AEW's ever done, to go from that, and then just a little while later, he went on to the next pay-per-view. He defeated Miro. He was a babyface good guy throughout all of that. But then the very next night in Virginia, he comes out and does a big heel turn, really gets that Virginia crowd working against him. And it just seems like it's kind of an odd choice to make. You bring in this big superstar that everybody's excited to see, and then you turn him bad guy so quickly. And maybe some of this was like, hey, maybe Jon Moxley was supposed to turn heel and go against Hangman Page. Maybe that, and maybe Bryan Danielson's just making up for them not being able to do that. But he's doing it so well. Like, he's so good at getting heat, getting the fans to boo him, getting the fans to respond to him like a bad guy, that it just doesn't, like, it just works. It works so well. And I think I said on the video last week, he could easily, after this match with Hangman Page, just go back to being a babyface, because nothing about his character has really changed all that much. I mean, he's holding on to submissions after the match. He's being really aggressive and saying he's going to kick people's heads in. But arguably, he could have been doing that to like Miro or MJF, and everybody would have cheered him. So we'll see what happens after the Hangman Page match. I think Danielson's probably going to stay heel after it at this point, just because it's been going so well and has been such an entertaining part of the show. But he gets on there with Tony Schiavone. He's being interviewed in the ring, and he talks about how he knocked out Colt Cabana's tooth last week, and this week he snapped Allin Angels' MCL, and then said, oh, but you fans in Atlanta probably won't even know what that means. And then he mentioned that they're going to be in Long Island next week, and he heard there's a member of the Dark Order from Long Island, which is, of course, referring to John Silver. Then he turned his attention again to Hangman Page and said, you're not about cowboy shit. You're about coward shit. This gets Hangman Page to get up from the announce booth, and he's going to go confront Bryan Danielson. But it had been announced earlier on social media that there's a stipulation that Hangman Page and Bryan Danielson can't touch each other. If Hangman Page touches Bryan Danielson, he'll be suspended. So anytime between right then and Winter's Coming on December 15th, when they'll have their title match. So Hangman's going to confront Danielson, but then John Silver runs out and says, you can't touch him, but I can touch him. Then he goes to hit the ring, but Danielson bails. And Danielson basically says John Silver is beneath him, and the fans don't deserve to see it. And that's more or less the end of the segment there. So Danielson versus John Silver next week. That'll complete the sort of going against the hometown crowd that he's done every week since Full Gear. Comes out, confronts Hangman Page in Virginia. It's Hangman's home state. Then faces Colt Cabana in Chicago. Then faces Allin Angels here in Atlanta. And then he'll face John Silver in Long Island next week. Before, a guy named Hangman who has a cowboy gimmick in Dallas, that's basically hometown right there. So I think this was excellent. This built up the Danielson versus Hangman Page match amazingly well. Everything that Bryan Danielson has done in the last 3 weeks, this is basically just like a 5-week program built around Bryan Danielson pissing off people in their hometown, pissing off the hometown crowds, and then finally, is Hangman Page going to give him his comeuppance at Winter is Coming? Could Bryan Danielson win the title here? Realistically, are they going to take the title off Hangman Page so quickly? Doesn't seem like they would, but you never, we don't know enough about Tony Khan's booking to really be able to say whether or not he would do something like that. Maybe Tony Khan said in the back of his mind, hey, I'm going to give Hangman Page the title and then take it right off him Dusty Rhodes style, a few weeks later. We don't know that that's not his strategy. It seems like fans are really behind Hangman Page, and that might be kind of a strange move to make, but we don't know that Tony Khan doesn't make strange moves yet. It hasn't been enough time. Doesn't seem like he does, though. But we'll see. Who knows? Who knows what they have planned? All right, so the next match would be CM Punk versus Lee Moriarty. But before we got that, we got Miro cutting a promo on God again. And I really like where this has gone. Because while Miro was the TNT champion, he seemed to be like into God. Like he was really happy with how God had been treating him. Now that he's not the TNT champion anymore, he doesn't like God. In fact, I think he even referred to God as an asshole in this promo. This was just fantastic. This was Miro in what appeared to be like just a blank white room. So he's like in limbo. Maybe he's in heaven. Maybe he's come to confront God. We're not sure. We're left to just use our imaginations as to where Miro actually is while he's cutting this promo. But he basically says, that God revealed to him what an asshole that he is. And I thought that was interesting, that Miro really appears to now be entering a rivalry with God. I believe Vince McMahon did that once. I don't know if this is going to lead to Miro versus the fallen angel, Kris Daniels, at any point, or maybe they'll team up. I really don't know what Christopher Daniels' attitude towards this might be. But Miro also says that he has two weaknesses, but he doesn't mention what those weaknesses are. He says one he will repair and one he will embrace. So I'm wondering if the one that he will repair is maybe his neck. Like, how that's sort of been a thing that's been going on with Miro lately is he's got one weakness, it's his neck. So maybe he's going to get something done on his neck and that won't be his weakness anymore. Like in storyline, he'll have had some surgery or something. And then he mentions another weakness that he will embrace. I feel that's probably got something to do with his hot and flexible wife, as he calls her often. And then he just signs off the promo saying, "This is the word of the Redeemer." So this was fantastic. I could watch Miro cut a promo in a white void every week if that's what they want to do. I'd like to see him in a wrestling match again, but for right now, this sure has my attention. So after that, we go into CM Punk versus Lee Moriarty. And this match was really interesting. And I kind of knew it was going to be this way for the same reasons that I knew Allin Angels would get in a bunch of offense against Bryan Danielson. But Lee Moriarty got in a lot of offense against CM Punk. And sort of the story of the match wasn't so much about look how awesome CM Punk is. Look how great he's doing now that he's returned. This was all about what a performance by Lee Moriarty. And so it started, Punk got some moves and Lee Moriarty got some moves. But then Lee Moriarty started to get near falls. He got a bunch of near falls. He was hitting his bigger moves. And Danielson was just kicking out on 2.99. And then finally Danielson, as if he'd I've had enough of this. I got to finish this guy off. Yeah, he just gives him the go to sleep, gets the victory. And all the while this is going on, MJF is on commentary because that's basically how it works in AEW. You have a match featuring somebody who's in the storyline and the person they're in a rivalry with is on commentary. So and I think that's great. That's a great way to build up future matches. I'm not saying that's a bad thing or anything like that. So MJF is wearing, Hanukkah themed suit because it's Hanukkah right now. And CM Punk refers to these as Larry David's pajamas. And MJF cuts a promo about how, look, CM Punk, you could barely get through that match with Lee Moriarty. You struggled to beat guys like Lee Moriarty and there's some other people, Daniel Garcia and guys like that. And CM Punk said, well, what you realize but won't admit is that Lee Moriarty, Daniel Garcia, these guys are better than you, and you know it. But MJF's whole thing is that CM Punk struggles to beat these guys, so how is he going to beat somebody like MJF? And he also referred to Punk as trying to get in Britt Baker's pants. So there was a little of that going on too. Finally, though, MJF just crossed a terrible line. And he said that he thought he heard CM Punk's dog Larry barking up in the back, and that maybe it's Larry who should go to sleep. And of course, you don't threaten someone's dog. Definitely not CM Punk's dog, or anybody's dog for that matter. Dogs should be safe in the world of wrestling. After all that we went through with Big Boss Man and Al Snow, and I think that dog was called Pepper or whatever. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't look into it. You don't need to have that information. You don't want to have that information. So CM Punk comes after MJF. MJF's like, no, this isn't going to happen. But you will get to watch me wrestle next week in the Diamond Battle Royal, where he's going to, that sort of battle royal they do every year where the last two competitors then meet in a singles match a week or two later, and the winner gets a diamond ring, which MJF has now won twice in a row. So MJF's going to be in that. It's going to be in Long Island, which is his hometown. And MJF talks about he's going to get a bigger reaction than Bret Hart in Canada, a bigger reaction than CM Punk in Chicago. And I wonder if that's the case. Because as we talked about earlier, I think you can like MJF and boo MJF at the same time. It feels very unnatural to want to cheer MJF, even if he's from your hometown. Because he's supposed to be getting booed. So I don't think it's the same as when Bret Hart was a good guy in Canada, but a bad guy everywhere else. I don't really think it's that with MJF. I think MJF is going to come into Long Island, and he might, when he comes out, he might get cheered when he first comes out. But I think he'll do something to annoy the crowd. He'll do something to insult the crowd and eventually start to get himself booed. I just feel like that's what the Maxwell Jacob Friedman character would do. He'd come out and he'd try and soak in all the admiration from his hometown fans, assuming he gets that, which he might. But then he would say something which makes it very clear he considers himself better than them, or he doesn't respect them in some way. He would belittle them in some way, in some accidental way that would cause the fans to turn on him. But he'll be in the Diamond Battle Royal next week. I imagine CM Punk might be on commentary. They didn't say that CM Punk is in the Battle Royal, so I'm assuming that he's not. Anyway, Punk stormed up the ramp after that comment about his dog being put to sleep, but then Wardlow came out and got between them. And so that was CM Punk versus Lee Moriarty. And we actually went to Britt Baker backstage after this. And Britt Baker... So you remember there was all that dissension between Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter last week, because Jamie Hayter was in the TBS tournament quarterfinals against Thunder Rosa. Britt Baker tried to interfere, ended up super kicking Jamie Hayter in the face. Thunder Rosa, a couple moves later, came back, got the victory. Then later at the Friendsgiving, Jamie Hayter was nowhere to be seen. They showed a little dissension in the ring after that match. So here they said, however, they've all made up. They've made up, but they were saying it in a way where it's like they're saying they made up, but we know there's still some bad feelings there. Britt Baker made a point of mentioning that even though Jamie Hayter had a good match last week, she still lost. She still lost. But anyway, they're claiming that they've made up and there is no dissension going on between Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. And next week, Jamie Hayter is going to take on Riho, because on Rampage last week, Riho pulled off... it's an upset. Riho pinned Britt Baker, and it was one of these pins where it was like on a pinning combination. Baker played it off like, it was a fluke. She was surprised by the move. It's one of those things where like you won, but would you be able to do it again when the title's on the line? So we're going to get Riho versus Britt Baker in a title match at some point. We didn't get it revealed when that match is going to be, but we've got Riho versus Jamie Hayter booked for next week. All right, so next up, we had Adam Cole came out to do commentary. I guess it was never made entirely clear why Adam Cole was coming out to do commentary here. The next match that they had up was Wardlow versus AC Adams. So I'm not exactly sure why Adam Cole's presence was required at the commentary table for that. But anyway, he wouldn't last very long there. So he comes out and he's acting fairly confrontational with Tony Schiavone because of Tony Schiavone and Britt Baker and all that. But then Orange Cassidy's music hits and Orange Cassidy comes out. And Adam Cole's like, why is he coming out? Why is his music hits? Because clearly Adam Cole is out there to see Wardlow versus AC Adams is the only sense I can make of it. But this is stemming from Orange Cassidy and Wheeler Yuta defeated Bobby Fish and Adam Cole on Rampage last week. So there's a little bit of a thing going on between them now. So Orange Cassidy comes out, just walks to the middle of the stage, and then just turns and looks at Adam Cole. Because that's kind of how Orange Cassidy confronts someone. He just kind of looks at them. The Young Bucks come out, but then Orange Cassidy turns to face them. He gives them his low-effort leg kicks. But then while he's doing this, Adam Cole comes up behind, gives him a low blow. The Young Bucks and Adam Cole do a bunch of 3-on-1 offense, stuff like that, until eventually Wheeler Yuta and Chuck Taylor come out with chairs to chase them off. And so that lets us know that we're going to get a little bit more from between Adam Cole and Orange Cassidy. Maybe we'll get a singles match between them, but it seems like it's it's the best friends versus the clique, right? The super clique or the elite. So maybe we'll get the best friends versus Adam Cole and Bobby Fish, the best friends versus Adam Cole and the Young Bucks in a trios match or something like that. But anyway, this was just building up that we're getting that rivalry coming up. All right, so after that, we just got a little bit of a promo featuring Tony Nese and Sammy Guevara. They're going to face off for the TNT title on Rampage on Friday. Then we did get Wardlow versus AC Adams. And this was interesting because this was like, we had nothing announced that Wardlow was going to be in a match here. So this was sort of like an unannounced thing. And it was just a complete squash. Like everything that CM Punk versus Lee Moriarty was not, this was. This was just Wardlow being a big, tough dude, repeatedly power bombing this guy, then pinning him. Then Shawn Spears comes into the ring and just takes the chair to him. So I was kind of wondering, like, why did we see this? Wardlow and Spears aren't really involved in any big angles right now. But with MJF in a feud with CM Punk, Spears and Wardlow are in the pinnacle with MJF, even though after the feud with the Inner Circle, they've sort of, like, both the Inner Circle and the Pinnacle, after that feud sort of ended, they haven't, like, been that aligned of a group. Like, it's sort of like they're all off doing their own thing. They're still a group, but they're just not acting very group-like right now. Like, they're not involved in the same angles. But maybe we saw Wardlow beat the crap out of this young fella because are we going to have CM Punk versus Wardlow at some point? Are we going to have CM Punk versus Shawn Spears at some point? Like, is CM Punk going to have to go through the Pinnacle to get to MJF and his Larry David pajamas? Maybe. That's entirely possible. But anyway, that's what we got here. We got Wardlow just beating the tar out of this guy. Then we went backstage, and it was Pentagon, Penta El Zero, M, and Pac. Pac was wearing an eye patch, and that's selling the mist that Malachi Black blew into his face in the main event last week. And so we're told that we're not going to get the tag team title match on Rampage this week. We were supposed to get FTR challenging the Lucha Bros for the AEW tag team titles in a best 2 out of 3 falls match on Rampage. They said that Phoenix was injured. He couldn't travel. In reality, there was just some travel problems. Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio said he's not injured. He's fine. He just wasn't able to or he had travel difficulties and couldn't get there. But those two teams are going to wrestle Saturday for AAA. There's a show Saturday, December 4th, and it'll be FTR versus the Lucha Bros for the AAA Tag Team Championships. So that match is going to happen. So it's not like Phoenix is injured and he's not able to do that. He'll be on that show. And provided there's no travel issues, he will be there. So then Taz and Powerhouse Hobbs and Hook joined the commentary team for our next match, which was Darby Allin and Sting taking on the Gunn Club. And this all stems from not Rampage last week, but the week before that, I think. Billy Gunn wrestled Darby Allin, which was a really fun match because this was like a David and Goliath style match because Billy Gunn is absolutely huge and Darby Allin is not all that huge. So Billy Gunn did a whole bunch of impressive looking things on Darby Allin. Darby Allin then made a comeback, hit his coffin drop twice because Billy Gunn kicked out of the first one-on-one, hits his coffin drop twice, finally gets the pin. But then the Gunn Club attacked both Darby Allin and Sting. After that match, Darby Allin and Sting confronted the Gunn Club last week. This week, we get them in tag team action. Darby Allin and Sting come out with matching face paint that I have to say looks pretty awesome. These two look great as a tag team together. This was just their 5th tag team match together, but they've won all 5 now. And what was the finish of this match? Allin took out Billy. Sting hit a death drop on, I believe, Colton for the win. So, and I have to imagine that that's the end of this little feud. I think they wanted to have Sting wrestle in Atlanta where he has so much history. They wanted him to have a big match in Atlanta along with Darby Allin. And so they built up the Gunn Club a little bit. They built up this rivalry a little bit. And then we got this fun tag team match on the show from Duluth, which is just outside Atlanta. So this was awesome. I think it's always awesome to see Darby Allin and Sting. To see them come out with matching face paint was pretty cool too. All right, so we got an interview segment with Chris Jericho next. And so Chris Jericho was on commentary during the Eddie Kingston versus Daniel Garcia match that was on Rampage last Friday. And so both Jericho and Eddie Kingston have gotten into it with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. So Jericho came out to rescue Kingston from a beatdown, but he basically said in this interview here, he wasn't doing it to rescue Eddie Kingston. He was doing it because he has beef with 2.0 and Daniel Garcia. And he referred to Matt as Squarehead again, because that's sort of Jericho's thing now, is he makes fun of people's heads and faces. So anyway, it just made it clear that he wasn't coming to Eddie Kingston's aid. He was just there to take out 2.0, and then he gets attacked by Garcia and 2.0. They beat him down with the chair, and we learn that Jericho will not be on commentary for Rampage. So then Taz and the other Taz, Hook, and Hobbs are still at the commentary table, and Taz starts talking about how 3 of the 12 men entered into the Diamond Dozen Battle Royal are from Team Taz. So I guess that's going to be Hobbs, Dante Martin, and Ricky Starks. I'm assuming so, unless Hook is in there. So Taz then kind of does a take on the Scott Steiner math promo where he's talking about how, like, we got 25% chance of winning, and then somehow that turns into 125% chance of winning. And anyway, this all brings out Lio Rush. And of course, last week we saw that Dante Martin, who had been being mentored by Lio Rush, Dante Martin signed on with Team Taz. So that seemed kind of out of the blue when he did that. And so I started thinking, like, I don't know. I think this is something maybe Lio Rush and Dante Martin have planned for Team Taz. Like maybe they've decided to swerve him. Maybe that'll happen in the Battle Royal. But this week, Dante Martin seemed pretty with Team Taz. So Lio Rush comes out and starts talking about how Taz saying that he's got a greater than 100% chance of one member of Team Taz winning the Battle Royal. Said he doesn't like that because it means he thinks that Lio Rush only has a 0% chance of winning the Battle Royal. Rush talks about being a fighter and that he's going to give everything he has. However, Ricky Starks and Dante Martin came out and they sort of formed a wall between Lio Rush and Taz. And so we got that sort of angle built up a little bit. And we learned 3 more participants in the Diamond Dozen Battle Royal next week. All right, next up, we're going to the TBS title tournament. We got an interview with Jade Cargill and Smart Mark Sterling backstage. They were talking about how Jade Cargill is going to wrestle on Rampage this week. She's going to take on a wrestler by the name of Janai Kai. I'm probably mispronouncing that. But I have seen her on the GCW Bloodsport show. I think I saw her on. Anyway, she's got kind of like a really cool martial arts style. She's awesome. Evidently, she's a student of Thunder Rosa, or Thunder Rosa had a hand in training her. So it's going to be Jade Cargill versus Janai Kai on Rampage. I like Janai Kai. Everything I've seen of her, I'm like, that's cool. She's a cool wrestler. So interesting to see that she's going to get a chance to show what she can do on Friday night. And so Thunder Rosa comes out and says, she'll be on commentary for that match because that's how things go in AEW. She's got a semifinal match coming up with Jade Cargill, so she'll be on commentary for that. Then Thunder Rosa starts yelling in Spanish, and we go to the ring for the final quarterfinal match in the TBS Championship Tournament. Ruby Soho facing Kris Statlander, and the winner of this will go on to face Nyla Rose. I loved everything about this match. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was possibly the best match I've seen Kris Statlander have. It was very, very good. They started off the match. They were both playing up like Ruby didn't want to punch her in the face, and then later Statlander didn't want to kick Ruby Soho, and so just gave her the boop instead. So they played it up very much like these are two baby faces who respect each other, who aren't going to fight dirty against one another. But then it just started to get more aggressive as the match went on because they're in a tournament and only one person can move on, right? So I thought they both did great, bunch of big moves. The finish came when Ruby Soho went for her kick, that kick she does, which they are referring to as the no future. Statlander blocks it. Statlander then goes for the Big Bang Theory, I think is the name of her big move there. But Ruby Soho ended up countering this into a pinning combination and got the 3 count. So Ruby Soho moves on to the semifinals. Excalibur, as soon as this match was over, said if these two wrestled 100 times, each would win 50. So they were very much trying to play up the fact that even though Ruby Soho won this time, these two are very even. So even though Kris Statlander lost, she's still really good, just as good as Ruby Soho. So that was basically what they were playing up there. But then after the match, Nyla Rose, who now Soho will face in the semifinals, attacks her from behind. However, Statlander then came back and chased Nyla Rose off because Statlander and Ruby Soho respect each other so much. And so now the semifinals are set for the TBS Championship Tournament. And when you look at the 4 wrestlers left, any one of them could easily win the title. It's not clear who is actually going to win this tournament. So in the first semifinal, we got Jade Cargill versus Thunder Rosa. Now, Jade Cargill's never lost. Thunder Rosa is arguably like the most built-up woman in the division. She's not the champion, but we've all seen her beat the champion before. Granted, it was in a lights-out match, so in storyline, it just doesn't count. Thunder Rosa beat Britt Baker in a lights-out match the last time they faced each other. Now, if it wasn't a lights-out match, that would probably mean Thunder Rosa should get a title shot if Britt Baker won the championship, right? Because, she has a win over her. But because it was a lights-out match, they can't do that because technically that match didn't happen. So Thunder Rosa, arguably the most built-up woman in the division. Jade Cargill, undefeated, built up as this giant monster. So something's got to give. Either Jade Cargill's going to get her first loss or Thunder Rosa is going to take a loss to Jade Cargill. And so you wonder which is the more likely scenario. And because we get this feud between Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker that's kind of on the periphery, we wonder if Britt Baker's going to do anything to cost Thunder Rosa this match. I mean, we saw like Serena Deeb cost Hikaru Shida a match against Nyla Rose not too long ago. Serena Deeb versus Hikaru Shida in their tournament match. Deeb focused on the knee the entire match. And then, so Shida is going into her match with Nyla Rose in the quarterfinals, already with an injured knee. During the match, Serena Deeb comes out, hurts her knee again. Nyla Rose puts on the stretch muffler and gets the victory. So you wonder if something like that might happen where Britt Baker would cost Thunder Rosa the match in the semifinals against Cargill. Maybe, or maybe Thunder Rosa is just going to beat Cargill and move on to the finals. Either one of those two scenarios is entirely possible. Then the other semifinal match, we've got Nyla Rose versus Ruby Soho. And again, really anything could happen. Ruby Soho could beat Nyla Rose. She's obviously they're building up Ruby Soho as someone really big in the division. She already lost a title match to Britt Baker, so being in the hunt for the TBS title by winning a tournament certainly makes sense. However, Nyla Rose is someone who, has been a dominant heel in the division ever since it started. But she already had her big run with the AEW women's title, kind of cleared out that division for a bit until Hikaru Shida finally beat her. Nyla Rose is someone they could put the TBS title on as well. So when you look at all 4 remaining members of this tournament, you could make a case for any of them winning. And that, I think, is part of why this tournament has been so good, is it feels very competitive, like anybody could win it. All right, so then we get to our main event, the Atlanta Street Fight, Andrade El Idolo versus Cody Rhodes. And boy, there's a lot to talk about here. So we saw Cody Rhodes in the main event last week. But for me now, every time Cody Rhodes comes out, the story is how are the fans going to react to him? This is Cody's hometown in Atlanta. And it was very much a mixed reaction. Like there were definitely Cody Rhodes fans there that were trying to get Cody chants going. But there was definitely the Cody haters there as well, who were very much into booing him. I definitely think, there was certainly more Cody Rhodes fans in Atlanta than there were in Chicago. Chicago seemed very united against Cody, and that there were definitely Cody Rhodes fans there as well, but they were drowned out much more by the Cody haters than what happened in Atlanta. You could hear the Cody fans in Atlanta. But it was still very much like there were still audible boos and people very much not into Cody Rhodes and chanting for his weight belt to be thrown back. But it wasn't this week. Whoever caught it was like, you guys can tell me to throw this back all you want. I am not doing it. So this match starts. Cody comes out and Andrade comes out to attack him before he gets to the ring. During this, Arn Anderson trips and falls off the stage. So apparently he's okay. And he definitely acted like he was okay because he got up and he continued the melee with Jose, the assistant. But it was funny because you could see Arn Anderson falls down. Then Jose picks him back up, like kind of helps him up. And then they start fighting. So it was like, all right, that fall wasn't part of the show. So I'm just going to help you up. But now we're going to continue with the angle. But thankfully, I guess Arn was okay. So this match, big street fight, a lot of stuff going on. As we mentioned, Cody threw his weight belt. No. Cody didn't throw his weight belt. Andrade threw the weight belt out. Cody went to go throw the weight belt out, but while he was doing that, Andrade attacked him, and then Andrade threw the weight belt into the crowd, but then the crowd didn't throw it back. That's right. I completely forgot about that for a second there, that Cody didn't throw the weight belt into the crowd at all. But anyway, then we get, a lot of stuff happens, a lot of big street fight type stuff. And then we get to the end of the match, which was quite dramatic. And you got to remember, this is Cody Rhodes in Atlanta. The last time they were in Atlanta, it was February of 2020, and Cody wrestled Wardlow in a steel cage match, and he did a moonsault off the top of the cage. So it's like he's got it in his mind, whenever we go to Atlanta, I got to do something big. And they did something big. So they set up a table. And then out of nowhere, Brandy Rhodes come in. She's disguised. She has a hoodie on and you can't see who it is. And then she unveils that this is Brandy Rhodes. And she pours gasoline on the table, lights the table on fire. Now, I've seen fire in wrestling. I've seen fire in ECW. Other promotions have done it. This was a big fire. Now, Cody, you could see throughout the match, he had something on his back. Like he had some substance on his back. which I assume was to help prevent burning in this situation. This was a little nuts because that was a really high fire. And it's not like fire hasn't gone wrong in wrestling before. They had to stop using it in ECW. But anyway, they felt safe enough to do it here. Cody gives Andrade a superplex, but Andrade goes through the fire a little bit, but Cody went right into the highest part of the flames of the fire. And so bits of the table break off. They're still on fire. They're landing on Andrade. They're landing on Cody Rhodes. As Cody's pinning Andrade, he's like flicking off bits of burning table off both of him and Cody. And they count the 3. Cody Rhodes picks up the victory. After the match, you can see that his back is burnt. Like, whatever that substance was on his back, it only helped so much. And it looked like that really hurt. But this was Atlanta. Cody had to go bigger than doing a moonsault off the cage. And he went with a suplex into a burning table. And you have to wonder if this was him trying to maybe get a babyface reaction in his hometown. Maybe what are they doing with Cody Rhodes right now? Because the fans want him to turn heel. But he said, I'm not turning heel. Turning heel would be the easy way out. He said that, but then does he still turn heel after saying that? He might. Or are they just going to continue with him being a babyface but getting the John Cena reaction? That could happen too. Like, Cody could have drawn a line in the sand and said, no, I do all this charity work. I'm part of the community outreach team here. I'm not turning heel. But like, Cody is a fantastic heel when he plays that role. If you remember when he was the heel in the Bullet Club Civil War angle where he was claiming to be the leader of the Bullet Club and all that, he was excellent in that role. And it's not like you can't be a bad guy in wrestling in 2021 and not do charity work. Of course you can. So is Cody telling the truth when he says, look, I'm never going to turn heel because I want to do this charity work and stuff like that? Like, that is the main reason I think why John Cena never went heel, is because of all of the charity work he does for WWE. So I guess if that's true, then week after week, Cody's just going to keep coming out, wrestling as a babyface, which he did in this match, but getting a bad guy reaction. I mean, they can do it. And right now, like, there was no signs in this match at all that Cody might turn heel. After last week's episode, he did sort of tease, and there was footage of this that popped up on social media after. He teased walking through the heel tunnel. You know, like the tunnel on stage left is for the bad guys and the tunnel on stage right is for the good guys. And he sort of teased like he'd walk out stage left, but then he didn't. He went through the babyface thing. So I don't know. It could go either way. They could turn him. They could keep him babyface. I think if they turn him, he'd be a fantastic heel because we've seen him be a fantastic heel before. But he might be serious that he never wants to turn babyface again. And we're just going to have to keep watching. Andrade and Cody Rhodes are now tied 1-1 in their series, so we might get a rubber match between the two. I don't know where this feud between Cody and Andrade and Malachi Black and sometimes FTR and Death Triangle are thrown in the mix. I don't know where this ends up. It seems like this entire storyline is more about the reactions that Cody gets from the live crowd than anything else. That's like the main story or the main thing that people pay attention to when they watch these matches. So we'll just have to see. All right, so let's run down what is upcoming, what has been announced for future events in AEW. So Rampage coming up. We won't get the tag team title match like we were supposed to. We will get Pac and Penta El Zero Miedo against FTR. Just a one fall match, non-title match. We'll get Jade Cargill versus Janai Kai with Thunder Rosa on commentary. So that'll build up the semifinal match between Cargill and Thunder Rosa that's upcoming. And for the TBS Championship, we will get Sammy Guevara versus Tony Nese. Then we got a few things announced for next week's Dynamite from the UBS Arena in Long Island. We will have the Dynamite Diamond Battle Royal. Now, the only participants I think I've heard so far are MJF and the 3 members of Team Taz. So there would be 8 others who would have to be announced. Bryan Danielson will continue his run of facing people in their hometown, and he'll take on John Silver. And then also Riho will take on Jamie Hayter as Riho prepares to take on Britt Baker for the title at some point, though we haven't had a date for that match announced. Then winter is coming. The December 15th show, we will have the big title match pitting Hangman Page defending the AEW World Championship against Bryan Danielson in what will be the climax of this month-long heel turn for Bryan Danielson. But it should be a fun show, and we'll talk all about it next week. Thanks so much for supporting this video. Please hit the like and share button to help this video be seen by as many people as possible. I'm Gentleman Ian for Spoiler Free Wrestling.